Bigfoot. Most people associate Bigfoot with the Pacific Northwest, but in fact, there's evidence that the creatures are very common in many stretches of the pristine wilderness across North America, including the old forests of upstate New York that cluster around Lake Champlain in Essex and Warren counties. Many people have reported hairy wild men in the area over the decades, but one unlucky fellow encountered Bigfoot up close twice in the span of just a few years, and both run-ins with the creature were terrifying. The first happened on June 25th, 1989, when Scott David Harris and his two friends were looking for one of their brothers, who was lost in the woods late at night. Walking along the railroad track that followed Lake Champlain's shoreline, they heard awful thrashing, growling, and metal ripping noises coming from the south bank of the trail. And whatever it was seemed to hear them too, because the noises it was making stopped, and it came over to check them out. Harris couldn't get a good look at the creature in the dark, but his friend ran off. He stuck around long enough to feel its breath and realized that it was a huge and smelly beast. When he ran, it chased him, and it only stopped its pursuit when Harris and his friends broke out of the woods onto a nearby road. But Bigfoot wasn't done with Harris yet. A few years later, in 1993, Harris was parked on a trail near Westport, New York, with another friend, waiting for a party to start, when he saw a huge black hairy creature coming out of the woods and reaching for the car's rear door. Harris alerted his friend, who immediately drove away, and Harris saw the creature rear up in the car's lights with glowing red eyes. Kinderhook blob. During the 1960s, no less than 6 eyewitnesses claimed to have encountered a floating ghostly blob-like creature that was so intimidating 2 armed men fled from it in mortal terror. The strange tale of this unique apparition begins in the forests surrounding Kinderhook, New York, a small town whose name literally translates to Children's Corner in the language of the original Dutch settlers, not so far from the lake of the same name. The first report of this creature comes to us from author and New York State Library genealogist Bruce Hollenbeck. When Hollenbeck was a 10-year-old boy, he and his cousin were frolicking in the woods behind his parents' house when they both saw something they would never forget. Hollenbeck would record this bizarre event years later in 1992 in a book he wrote with Paul Bartholomew, Robert Bartholomew, and William Brand, titled Monsters of the North Woods. According to Hollenbeck, the children looked in the direction of the strange sound and were shocked to see what he later described as a white object peering at me from behind a nearby pine tree. Hollenbeck would clarify that statement, saying, peering, but in fact it had no eyes that I could see. Wisely choosing caution over curiosity, the frightened cousins beat a hasty retreat back to Hollenbeck's parents' home. It's worth mentioning that there have also been numerous reports of UFOs at the same time, as well as a large, reddish-haired, hairy hominid living in the same patch of woods. In fact, Hollenbeck's grandmother and cousins claim to have seen and pursued what was later dubbed the Kinderhook creature by the nationally syndicated television show PM Magazine. Sewer alligators. The typical story goes that New Yorkers vacationing in Florida or Louisiana decide to bring back a baby alligator to New York as a pet. But when the gator gets too big to be cute anymore, the family just flushes it down the toilet, hoping to get rid of the creature. The gator then survives and, even worse, thrives under the city, feeding mostly on rats and other vermin, eventually growing big enough to menace human targets, such as sewer workers or transients. Some variations of stories include alligators who have turned albino due to lack of light exposure, or who have grown so large that they are virtually dragons. Though the sewer gator is an American urban legend, so it's not too surprising that it has a long pedigree in New York. And to spice it up a bit, it turns out that real alligators have indeed been found in New York City sewers before. So this urban legend is, at the very least, rather plausible. Montauk Project. An alleged series of secret U.S. government projects conducted at Camp Hero, or Montauk Air Force Station on Montauk, Long Island, for the purpose of developing psychological warfare techniques and exotic research, including time travel. Jacques Vallée describes allegations of Montauk Project as an outgrowth of stories about the Philadelphia experiment. Stories about the project have circulated since the early 1980s. According to UFO researchers, the Montauk experiment stories seem to have originated with the account of Preston Nichols, who claimed to have recovered repressed memories of his own involvement. Nicholas, born on May 24, 1942 in Long Island, New York, claims to have degrees in parapsychology, psychology, and electrical engineering. And he has authored a series of books known as the Montauk Project series, along with Peter Moon, the primary topic of which is alleged activity at Montauk. These center on topics including U.S. government military experiments in fields such as time travel, teleportation, mind control, contact with alien life, and staging faked Apollo moon landings. Framed as developments which followed a successful 1943 Philadelphia experiment, these accumulate in a hole ripped in space-time in 1983. The authors have encouraged speculation about the contents. For example, they wrote, "Whether you read this as science fiction or nonfiction, you are in for an amazing story," in their first chapter describing much of the content as soft facts. In a guide for readers and publishing a newsletter with updates to the story. The story of the Montauk Project has even stemmed into TV shows, with it being the idea that is behind Netflix's show Stranger Things. Cropsey. Cropsey is the creature that lurks at the end of your block. It's the shadowy figure that prowls the edge of the playground. Cropsey is Staten Island's personal boogeyman. Parents use the tale to spook their little ones at night, to go to bed, or Cropsey will get you. They made it like this crazy guy would kidnap kids and only those who didn't behave. It was mostly a scare tactic. Cropsey turned frighteningly real in 1970 when a local drifter named Andre Rand allegedly began attacking the children of Staten Island. Rand, who was born Frank Russian, worked as a janitor at the Willowbrook State School, an institution for mentally disabled children, not far from the ruins of Seaview. During its 40 years of operation, Willowbrook reportedly came under fire for the mistreatment of its students. A young Geraldo Rivera revealed the institution's horrid conditions to the public in 1972. By 1987, the school was shut down for good. Andre Rand left Willowbrook long before it closed, but many believe in his guilt. Also believe his tenure at the facility, notorious for abuse, later influenced his crimes against children, and the bodies of the victims were never recovered. But eventually he was convicted of kidnapping and first-degree murder of a Staten Island child in 1987, and later with a 1981 kidnapping. He is currently serving 2 sentences of 25 to life and will become eligible for parole in 2037. I hope you ghouls enjoyed these New York urban legends. I really love the Cropsey one. I wanted to get so much into it, but I honestly right now I don't have time to record that much, and maybe I should just make it its own video, because honestly I love the Cropsey legend and the story behind it, and then the legend coming true. It's really interesting. And the sewer alligators I thought was really funny. I couldn't stop thinking of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, though, to be honest. So, yeah, I hope you ghouls enjoyed it. And as always, the last video will be on the top left. The next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen, as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.